Custom music adds a lot of value to a level in Mario Maker. Most music levels are auto-scrollers because it's relatively easy to make the equivalent of a music box. However, auto-scrolling restricts the types of levels that we can make with music. Today, I'll show you the basics of how to make looping music in Mario Maker. Before you make looping music in Mario Maker, it's very important that you first know how to make music in the normal style, in an auto-scroller. Danny B has a very nice video on how music in Mario Maker works in general. In this video, I will assume you already know how to make a regular auto-scrolling music level, and I'll teach you how to transform a regular music level into a looping music level. Before we go too deep into how track music works, you have to understand that the pitch of the note that is played by the block on a track is based on where it originally spawned and not where it makes contact. Since these two music blocks on tracks spawn at different heights, the pitch of the notes that they play will be different. In looping music, we're also going to be transferring a lot of notes between tracks, so it's helpful to know when a block lands on a new track, what direction is it going to go in. There are four main rules to decide the direction an object on tracks will start moving when it lands on a new track, and they go in decreasing priority. First is the endpoint rule, which is if an object on tracks lands on the endpoint of a track, then no matter what, it will try to go in the direction that keeps it on this line of track. As all the note blocks will land on this little edge of that track, that means that they will all be moving to the right no matter what direction they were going before. The second rule is that if it's not trying to land on the endpoint of a track, the object will try to keep as much of its momentum going as possible. So here, if the block was moving to the right, then it'll try to keep moving to the right. If it was moving to the left, it'll try to stay moving to the left. The third rule is that if there is still a tie, then the object will try to remember the last relevant movement direction to go on the track. So here, because the music block was originally moving to the right, now it will start moving to the right on this track. And since this note block is initially moving to the left, it'll try to start moving left on this long piece of track. The fourth and final rule is that if there was a tie on every other rule before, then it'll turn 90 degrees counterclockwise. This happens if that note block was always moving vertically. Now that you understand the basics, I'll show you how you can transform your auto-scrolling music level that looks something like this to a looping music level that looks something a little bit more like this. So first, let's talk about the anatomy of a looping music setup. A looping music setup has three main parts: the synchronizing tracks, the delivery track, and the track loop. As the pitch of a music block depends on what Y position it spawns at, that will change how far it has to travel on tracks. And the first order of business when making a looping music level is to try to get rid of that difference in distance. In theory, we would want all the music blocks to be in line, just in the order in which the notes are going to be played, but at different pitches. But if we just put them on a single line of track like this, they'll have the same pitch. This is where the synchronizing tracks come in. The point of the synchronizing tracks is to spawn in those music blocks and quickly get rid of that difference in Y position so that we can collect all the music blocks on one main line, where here all these music blocks have different pitch and they're going to be played in the order in which we want. However, they're now in a line that's a lot easier to work with. The second main part of a looping music setup is the delivery track. The delivery track is what collects the note blocks from the synchronizing tracks and then delivers it into the track loop. So here you can see that the delivery track is the middleman between the synchronizing tracks and the loop track. The delivery track also has a separate role, which is if you have multiple track loops going, you can change the length of the delivery track so that all the different musical instruments that are in different loops are synchronized, so that your percussion and your wind or whatever, they're all playing in harmony. The track loop is the final structure where all the music blocks line up to bang against an instrument over and over and over again to play your song. Now I'll walk you through how you can use my algorithm to convert your regular auto-scrolling music level to looping music. I have two main algorithms that are relatively very simple and sometimes very limiting. This may not be the best algorithm for making masterpieces like a Zenmai level or a Ren level or Gate G level. However, my technique is super easy to learn with, and can still be used to make good looping music levels. Step 1 is to make your music as you would for a regular auto-scrolling music level. When making music levels, sometimes people will offset notes like this or use note repeating setups to have a note play at a different time. Do not do any of these right now. We need the music in a format where no notes are displaced. Basically, the music needs to look exactly like this. The second step is to determine if the loop track is going to go to the left of the synchronizing tracks or on the right of the synchronizing tracks. For an instant load algorithm, it doesn't really matter. If your track loop is on the left side of the synchronizing track, then you can usually make a much cleaner level. However, if it's on the left, you'll probably need to use a global instrument setup. There's a guide down below in the description. For an instant load algorithm, whichever side you choose will load up equally fast, but if you use my general horizontal algorithm, which I'll go into later, generally speaking, having it on the left side will load in the music and make it start playing sooner. Let's say I've decided that the track loop is going to be on the left side. Under that music, I'll draw a little dummy delivery track to just collect notes. Then I'm going to delete all the instruments. Now for every music block in the song, I'm going to change that to a music block on a track going to the left. You can give it wings or not depending on the tempo that you want to go for. Now I have converted every single note in the song to a music block on a track moving to the left. Now I'm going to press play in the editor and see if any of the music blocks gets hung up. I want to see all these music blocks falling onto this line of track in the exact same order that they appear here. These two music blocks hit these two endpoints. Because of the endpoint rule, they are now totally separated from the other notes. We're going to fix that every time we see a music block landing on the endpoint of a track and then turning around. Because of the endpoint rule, we're going to extend that track out a bit so that it no longer lands on an endpoint. Now that we've extended the track, you'll see that all the music blocks will land in a perfect row. So here we have exactly the structure that we wanted. Next, I'm going to make a dummy track loop and then connect the delivery track onto it. The loop that I made is much larger than I need for testing purposes, and the instrument that I put in doesn't really matter for now. We can fix everything up later, but first we want to work comfortably. Here, when I press play, all the music blocks go into that track loop and work just fine. Remember that this track loop can be a closed circuit like this, or it can be some line of tracks that ends in two closed track pieces. With this, we already have the main backbone for our looping music. Here's where the paths diverge. First, I'll show you my general horizontal algorithm, which allows you to get a wide variety of tempos, but the loading time for the level is going to be really long. Second, I'll show you my instant load algorithm, which allows you to get all the music playing very, very quickly, but there's only two tempos that you can play. For the general horizontal algorithm, this is basically all we need to make the looping music. We can shore it up by removing some unnecessary pieces of track in the track loop, but this is basically it. The only thing you need to add is a way to scroll Mario into the music to decide what the tempo is. You can do this with either regular auto scroll or by having some sort of contraption that moves Mario through this area at a fixed speed. Here's an example with a blue lava lift. You notice that the music plays from lowest pitch to highest pitch, so this music is playing from left to right. Alternatively, I can push Mario with a non-winged music block on a track, which goes slower. For auto-scrolling music, the speed that it plays is just however fast you scroll a screen. However, for looping music in the general horizontal algorithm, the speed of the music depends on if the notes are winged or not, if the music is going left or right, and on how fast Mario is scrolling. As an example, this is what happens when you scroll with a blue lava lift. You notice that the music plays in the right order, left to right. The tempo is very different if you scroll from the opposite direction. So if we're scrolling from left to right, then this music block starts going first. Whatever time this music block has to go before this music block spawns and starts moving on a track, that is going to reduce the spacing between the two notes. See what happens when I play the music flipped, now with this music block on a track. Because we scrolled slower than the winged music blocks move, this caused the high-pitched note that it's supposed to be at the end of the song to come first, and the entire song plays backwards. If this is actually the tempo that we want, then we can flip around the music. So this is the same orientation. This reads exactly as the music was in the regular auto-scrolling music level. The difference now is that it's on tracks moving to the right instead of to the left. When we load this in at the speed of a non-winged music block, you see that now the song is playing in the correct direction. Why would you want to do this? Well, this lets you get some different tempos, especially some very fast tempos. If I used a winged flimsy lift on the track, this has a speed that's very close to, but very slightly less than a winged music block. So here what happens to the tempo. Because the speed that we scrolled was so close to the speed of the music blocks on tracks, this makes the music play at a very, very fast tempo. Now that you understand the basics, I'm going to give a quick recap so you can remember which direction you need to go in and make a quick informed decision. The main thing to look out for is whether or not the direction of the blocks opposes the scroll speed. If you are scrolling from left to right and the blocks spawn moving right to left, then the music will always play left to right. And the faster you scroll, the faster the music will play. If the blocks are moving in the same direction as your scroll, as in you're scrolling left to right and the blocks are also going left to right, then the music will flip direction depending on whether or not you're going slower or faster than the music blocks themselves. If you are scrolling slower than the music, then it plays normally like this, left to right. If you are scrolling faster than the music blocks move, and it's going the same direction as the scroll, then you have to additionally flip the music left-right so it plays in the correct direction. The tempo will be faster the closer your scrolling speed is to the speed of the music blocks themselves. And so here are some closing examples to demonstrate that. If you don't want to guess what direction your music has to go or what tempo, I have a guide in the description. Just pick whatever speed you want to play your music at and then pick that option. Just know that there are other scrolling speeds that you could potentially access. I just put here a couple of basic examples. One example of a level that uses my general horizontal algorithm to generate looping music is GateG's Zelda 2 dungeon level. Here you can see that the synchronizing tracks are extremely simple, and you can see that Mario is scrolled in with a Buzzy Beetle walking on a conveyor. This level uses a global instrument setup to keep the music loaded throughout the entire world. Obviously, the main downside of this technique is the long loading time, and you want to fill in that gap with something that might be somewhat interesting to keep Mario's attention during that time. You can also see this algorithm being used at the end of my JoJo level to have a small little ditty for Jotaro's theme. Next, I'll show you the second algorithm, the instant load algorithm. The point of the instant load algorithm is to have all the notes spawn in simultaneously. That way you don't have to wait for any scrolling mechanism to slowly push Mario through the level. So let's go back to what we had before. Here, let's say that this is our music track. This is what our current setup looks like. The first restriction for the instant load algorithm is that the music has to play at the normal speed of music blocks on tracks, either winged or not winged. Your two options are 40 BPM and 80 BPM. You cannot play at different tempos than that. The second restriction is that all the music needs to fit on one screen. If you want to have a simple little music loop, then you might be done here. That might be all you need. But if you want multiple screens of music, then we need to compress the music all into one single loading screen. Right now, this is what we had before. This is the uncompressed music that looks very, very similar to what the music would be in an auto-scrolling music level. In the current state, this music is 9 tiles wide, so they're going to take up 9 tiles of real estate in order to load them in. However, if we're trying to cram as much music as possible into a small horizontal space, then we can do a lot better than 9 tiles. Because we are playing at the same rate as music blocks on tracks, we can stall music blocks by forcing them to go in the wrong direction or to stall them on other segments of track to stall them out. If you see all these patterns of track, all of them will spawn a music block to go in and play at the exact same time. Generally speaking, what you want to do in an instant load algorithm is to swap between these different shapes of track so that you can cram in your music into a small horizontal space. I'll walk you through that process. So we want to get this loading zone as thin as possible. So I notice that this music block is the one that's currently making it fat. What I can do is translate this music block this way, because these two patterns actually play at the same time. Here we don't care about the Y position. The Y position for these patterns are irrelevant. What we care about is moving the X position of the note around. And that starts getting us somewhere. And this note can be actually moved even farther to the side. This note can actually be moved into this sort of pattern. We can replay the notes after doing some of these substitutions. And we see that we have the exact same song as before. The difference is that now it takes up less horizontal space. I didn't show this before, but when you're making substitutions, you want to test the song regularly in case notes are landing on endpoints and weird things are happening in between the notes, because it becomes very hard to figure out what is going wrong. So save frequently. We can actually keep going and compress that music all the way to this pattern, shown here. And you can see if we do this, we have the exact same song, but now, instead of taking up 9 tiles horizontally to load in all the music blocks, it only takes up 3 tiles. This allows us to fit a lot more music into one loading screen. You only need to do this compression if you're trying to load in more than one full loading screen of music. An example of a level that uses my instant load algorithm is my Zozo Slam Shuffle level based on Final Fantasy VI. One of the main advantages is that Mario doesn't have to wait at all for the music to get going. Another example is this level, which uses my instant load algorithm to generate the main theme song for Divinity Original Sin 2. For the track loop, you want to optimize that to be exactly as long as you need. However, you can also get fancy with the types of instruments, to use instruments that you can't normally use in auto-scrolling music levels. So here, for example, you can use what's called a compound instrument, which is when you're playing the same note, but with 2 instruments at the same time. So here I have a Goomba piano and a dry bone flute. You can make a wide variety of different instruments that you don't have access to normally. This level also uses a variety of compound instruments to make different sounding music. For example, a Goomba and Goombrat combined have a unique sound that you don't normally get otherwise. By using an on-off switch to swap the track at different parts of the level, we can swap instruments. In this case, I have a combo Piranha Plant for both piccato strings and legato strings for a more medieval sounding string instrument. I'd go into more detail on how to make globally loaded instruments, but that's a topic for a totally different video. For now, what I taught you should be good enough to make looping music levels. And if you need to use global instruments, I'll link a guide in the description below. I hope this was helpful. I hope this allows you to make some simple looping music levels, and I'll see you around, guys. Later.